This video is going to cover the basics of Adobe Flash. Particularly, it's going to talk about navigating the workspace, adding images, and working with layers in the timeline. Okay, so when you start Flash, you're going to have this screen and you want to select Create New ActionScript 3.0. ActionScript 3.0 is simply the programming language that you will be using. In this video I will not cover programming, but I will in future videos. Okay, so when you open it up, you're going to have this view here. This is known as the workspace. Now if yours doesn't look exactly like this, what makes it look like this is this menu up here. Notice where it says Essentials. So you can select Animator, Classic, Debug. My preference is Essentials. Okay. So when you're looking at this view, this piece right here is known as the stage, and this is essentially a preview of what is going to be shown in your movie. Okay. This is the layers menu. This shows you all the layers that you're going to have, and they work similarly to the way that they do in Illustrator and Photoshop, meaning that a layer on top, whatever's on the layer on top will be in front, whatever is in a layer on the bottom will be in the back. Okay, this is the timeline, and each one of these little rectangles represents a frame. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. Okay, this is known as the Properties Inspector. This, where it says Properties. Okay, this is known as, and this Properties Inspector, it shows you properties of either the stage, which is showing right now, or if you import things or create things, it'll show you the properties of that. The library, this is going to show you all the items that you have stored in your Flash file. For example, you can import images, and that would show up here, or you can make images within here and save them into the library. That just allows you to use them again and have reference to them. You also have what is known as the Tools panel, and this just has your various things like your selections and your text and your shapes and things like that. Okay. Now, right now I am in Essentials, but if I wanted something else to be showing up here, I can select Windows. And if you're going to be coding, I recommend having the Actions one. This is where the code will go. Now right now it's just kind of floating in the middle, but if you want, you can drag it and drop it over here. Okay. And now it'll just always be there for you. I like to keep it there, and I usually will save this as a new workspace, and then I'll just name it something like Mine or whatever. Okay, and now notice it says Mine up here. Now if I don't want that, if I want it to go back to what it usually is, I can just go to Essentials and it goes back to what it was initially. You can also do Reset Essentials if you end up accidentally saving it or something, or if you didn't save it as a new space and you're just working in Essentials. If you do Reset Essentials, it'll bring it back to its initial thing. Okay, so here is our stage, and this is what will be showing in our movie. So when we put it on the web or do it in a file, this is how big it'll be. Okay. Now if we look at the Properties menu, it says that it's 550 by 400. Yours may say something different, but that's what mine says. Now the average size for a Flash game, or I should say the most popular size for a Flash game, is 550 by 480. So I'm going to change this to 550 by 480. And that's all I got to do. Okay. Now the second most popular is 640 by 480. So you might like that size. It doesn't really matter. You can do it whatever you want, but those just happen to be the most common ones. You can also change the color of the stage. That's just the background. So let's say I want it to be like a gray, whatever. Okay, and you just select this little rectangle here and then select what color you want. I like this one better. Okay. Now, this is what is going to show in your Flash movie, just the stuff that's in this little frame here. Okay. Now if you want this to be bigger, if you want it to take up more room on your screen, if it's too small and hard to see, You can zoom in the various things here. I don't usually like doing the 100 and 200, the percentage ones, because they usually can be hard to see. My preference is fit in window, because it'll maximize it and it won't make me have to scroll horizontally or vertically. Now, the other one here, show all, is also pretty helpful. See that it does require scroll vertically in this case. But what show all does is if you have things maybe say that are outside of your stage, if they're outside of the stage's frame, like maybe they're way up here and then they zoom in, show all will show that. So it'll zoom out so that everything that's in your stage will be shown, or not just stage in the workspace will be shown. Okay, so let's see, what do I want to talk about next? Okay, let's talk about importing things into the library here. Okay, there's a few different ways. You go to File, Import. Now, one way is Import to Stage, and the other way is Import to Library. The first one is also has a hotkey, Control R, and then I prefer Import to Library. I tend to use that every time. Import to Stage will automatically place it on the stage, where Import to Library will put it in the library here for you so that you can use it again later. So I'm going to show you how to import to library. So you select Import to, and then you just select whatever you want. Okay. So notice there's nothing that's been placed on the stage by doing that, but it has been placed over here in the library. Okay, now notice this is a .png. I prefer PNGs because they maintain the transparency that was created in Photoshop or Illustrator. This one was created in Illustrator. Otherwise, if it was a JPEG, it would have white around this. Notice that there's a blue rectangle, that's the whole size of the image. There would be white in here and you wouldn't be able to see that gray in the background. Okay. Now you can do all sorts of different files. You can do a PNG, you can do a JPEG if you want. You can also do Illustrator files. So here's an Illustrator file. Now when you select an Illustrator file though, it's going to ask you about all these different paths and stuff. This is everything that was used to create the item. Okay, so I recommend just leave it as flash layers. You can also do import as a single bitmap image if you want. If you import it as a single bitmap image, it looks a little grainy. Okay, but if you do import to library, select it, and you don't select that, let's go ahead and replace it. Notice it looks way cleaner. Okay, so I tend to prefer to use just straight Illustrator files because they look really crisp when they're imported into Flash. Okay, notice also when I re-imported it, it replaced the original image. I didn't have to delete the original one, so that's really nice. This right here was created in Illustrator, but it still looks a little grainy, and that's because I saved it as a PNG and imported it in. Okay, so I have these two different images here, and I can move them around pretty easy, right? I can also reposition them using different things. So if you go to the property, so select the image that you're looking at, go to properties, you can position it on the stage. So like if I wanted it at 0, 0, now it's perfectly lined up with this point here. This is 0, 0 here. Now notice when I change this to 50, it goes down. So the Y coordinates are actually the opposite of what they are when you learn them in math class. Okay, in math class this would be like -50, but in Flash it's +50. Okay, you can also change the width here. I could change this to like 20 or whatever, and notice it got really skinny. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo it. If I select this little icon here, that will maintain the aspect ratio. So if I hit 20 now, it gets small in both directions. Okay. Now the other thing is you can select this icon here, which is the freeform tool, and that will allow you to resize it. Okay. You can also rotate it by just sizing it all the way across. So let me show you again. You just pull it all the way. Okay. I'm sorry, that was reflect, not rotate. You can rotate it. You can squeeze it. You can do all sorts of different things. Now, if you want it to scale where everything is done perfectly, if you hold down the Shift key, notice it does it well instead of not holding the Shift key where it kind of doesn't maintain the ratio. Okay, so I recommend whenever you're scaling, just always hold down Shift key so that your ratio is always maintained. Okay, you can also do this. Notice where up and down arrows. You can also kind of deform it a little bit with those corner ones. Okay, let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, so you can also add text using this tools bar. So here's text. Now there are different options here. I will talk about those in future videos. I'm just going to leave it on classic text, static. I'm going to leave all of that. You can change the font, and that's in family. It doesn't want to drop down for me right now. You can do the drop down menu and that'll change the font. Style is whether it's bold, italic, whatever. You can change the size, you can change the color. I'm going to make it red because why not? Okay, and then you just click, and then you could just say whatever you want. Okay. Now, watch what happens when you scale. All it does is move the box. Okay, and now that's when this is selected, when the text tool is selected. However, if you so if you want the text to be a different size, you can change it here. Ooh, that's too big. Didn't mean to do 200, meant to do 20. Okay. You can also do things with the letter spacing, and you could just kind of play around with it. You could do subscripts and superscripts. You can do a bunch of different stuff here. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the layers in the timeline. Okay. So if I want to add layers to this so that these guys are each on their own layer, notice this guy right now is everything is in the order that I added it. You know, I added this first so it's on the bottom, then I added this so it's above it, and then I added this last so it's on the top. Okay. But let's say I want to change it around. I can do this in a few different ways. I can right click on it, then I can go to arrange, and I can do send back or bring to front. Bring to front will make it the frontmost item. Send to back will make it the backmost item. You can also bring it forward, and that'll bring it forward one ahead than what it is currently. Okay, but the easier way to deal with that is to deal with layers. So let's say I want to have the logo on this layer and the penguin on this one. All I did to change that was I said here's logo, I double clicked it and I renamed it. Okay. Then to make a new one, I selected this key here, that was a new layer, and then I double clicked it and I changed the text for it. Do another one, double click, and make it say text. Okay. Now I can just, cut and paste these things. I'm actually on the wrong one. So let's cut this one and put them on the second layer. So I'm just going to do Control X. I'm going to select this layer, Control V. Now I want you to notice that each one of these has little circles next to them. If there is a filled circle, that means there's something on it. If there's an empty circle, that means there's nothing on it. Okay, so notice there's nothing on this text layer. I mean, you can also hide these layers, so if you see this little eye, I can hide it. So now I can't see the penguin. And I can't see the logo and the text because they're both still on this layer. Okay, so I'm going to cut and paste this one into the text layer. Okay, notice now there is a little dot there, and you can see when you hide that layer that it is definitely on that layer. I like to use this eye to make sure I have everything on the correct layers. You can also lock these layers, and that will keep you from being able to select things. Notice I can't select logo anymore. Okay, but I can still select the penguin, and I can still select hello, how are you? Okay, so that's just simple layer stuff. You can also group layers by doing a folder. So if you click on this, so let's say I wanted to have a folder named art. I can put the penguin in there, and I could put the logo in there, and it's just a simple drag and drop. And now the way I have it now, the logo and the penguin are now above the text. Okay, see, because the text is below it. But if I want the text on top, I can just move it there. Okay, so let's go back and take it out of these. I'm going to take it out of the folder. Delete. Okay. So now let's talk about the timeline. Right now, if we were to try to put this on a website or something, it would just look exactly like this. There would be no animation to it. It would just be a logo, this random phrase, and this smoking penguin. Okay. But if I want some kind of animation to it, I'm going to have to use the timeline. Okay. Now, when it comes to the timeline, these pieces here are known as the frames. Okay, and notice it goes all the way down. Okay. Now, right now, I am on frame 1, the very first frame. Now you can tell that because the little red thing here is covering the 1. Also, you can see here it says current frame 1. Okay. Now, if you want to make this look just like this for, I don't know, 15 frames. Right now it's only at 1 frame. You can go over to 15 and you can do insert frame. But notice it only did it for the penguin. So at 15 frames, the other 2 things are gone. Okay, or at frame 15, the other 2 things are gone. If you want them all to be there, you can highlight this and do insert frame again. You can also use the shortcut key F5. There you go. And so now everything is on there for 15 frames. Okay. So let's say you don't want it to look like this. Let's say you want it to just be the penguin, and then in 15 frames the logo pops up, and then in 15 frames the hello, how are you pops up. You're going to need to use what are known as keyframes. Keyframes are essentially frames that symbolize a change in the content on the stage. Okay, so right now we have keyframes which are represented by these little circles. So that means there are things on these layers. But if I want, I can add a keyframe here. Okay, and then insert frame. Okay, so I've made that 20. Now notice, since there's nothing on these 2 layers, nothing is showing up here except for the logo. Okay, but if I want the penguin to extend to that, I just have to do insert frame, insert frame. Okay, so everybody's there. Now it doesn't look like I've done anything, but if I go to this first frame, I can now delete this guy, and notice when I move this thing, this is known as scrubbing the playhead. If I scrub the playhead, now the logo doesn't show up until frame 16. Okay, so notice this circle here is blank, or it's empty. This is a blank keyframe. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a few more frames to everybody. So I'm going to highlight those, insert frame. You can also, remember, use F5. Okay, so right now I have a little movie. It starts with the penguin, hello, how are you? Then at frame 16, the logo shows up. Okay, now if I wanted the hello, how are you to disappear, I can hit this frame. It doesn't really matter which one I choose. And then I could do insert blank keyframe. Now notice that has made it empty. Okay, so a blank keyframe will put a change in there, but with nothing. Okay, it removes everything from you. if I do it here, let's do it right here. Insert keyframe. Notice it doesn't really seem like it did anything. However, if I select this and move this guy here, notice that the hello or how are you is in its original position, and then when the keyframe gets there, it moves. So keyframes move or remove things, okay? Or they can add things. Okay. So here's our simple little video. Hello, how are you? It moves over. I mean, it's not very interesting, you know, but if you wanted to do stuff with animation, this is the way you would do it. Okay, let's see. Now, also, if this timeline is too small for you to see, you can select this button here, and you can change. Right now it's at normal. You can make it medium. It makes it a little bigger. There's a whole bunch of different options here for you. I like normal. Okay. Now, if you want to preview your animation without having to do this, without having to scrub the playhead, if you put it at the frame you want to start at and then press the enter key, it'll automatically run the animation for you, and then it stops here. Okay. But if you want to preview it in a separate window, the way you would see it if you put it on the web, if you hit Control and Enter, this is what it would look like. And notice it does loop it. Okay. Now, if you want to put this on the web currently the way it is, you can't do it. Okay, so I need to save it. I'm going to just save it as video 1. Okay. Okay, and I'm saving it as an FLA file. If you save it as an FLA file, that just allows anybody in Flash to open it. Okay, but you can't put an FLA file on the web. So if you want to put it on the web, you go to File and then Publish. Okay, now it doesn't seem like it did anything, but if I go to the folder that I saved it in, oh, it was already open. There are a few new files that happened. Okay, it's a little hard to tell here, but the things that were made were these two here. Okay, this is the one I saved by just doing save, and these are the two that were created by doing publish. This is an HTML file, and this is a Swift movie file. You can open this, and it'll show you exactly what we saw when we did Control Enter. Okay, and you can open this without having Flash open. This is also what you would import into your website. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that probably in a future video. Okay, and that is it for now.